Yes? All right. Hey, good evening, everybody. November 14th, little snow on the ground, not enough to really plow, so it didn't excite me much, but we'll get this meeting started with the Pledge of Allegiance. I believe Rob is here once again. Thank you for, will bless us with an invocation before we open, so please rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
While Rob's coming up, Rob, congratulations on a great community prayer breakfast last week. Well attended, and the schools, we had it at the middle school, and a great panel with students and administrators, and it was well done. Thank you very much.
Let's pray. As we prepare to begin this meeting, we humble ourselves before you. Lord, you're the author and giver of life, and I thank you today for continuing to sustain in each of us the breath of life throughout this day. You've given us so many great things in this nation, in this state, and specifically in Westfield itself. Father, I thank you for Mayor Cook and for each of our counselors here tonight, each of our presenters, each of our community members here listening, our police and fire as well. Lord, you're doing great things in this community, and we cannot thank you enough for your care, for your love, for your joy and your grace, evident to each one of us each day. Father, as we prepare, we ask that the words of our mouths, the meditations of our hearts, be pleasing to you tonight, or quickly become so if they're not there quite yet. We pray your best this evening as we meet, as we discuss, as we decide, as we talk through things. We look forward to what's to come. We bless you tonight in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Councilor Johns, do you wish to run the meeting?
Thank you, Mayor Cook. Marla, Ayla, would you please note the presence of a quorum?
Joe Edwards.
Here.
Scott Willis.
Here.
Cindy Spiljarek. Here. Jake Gilbert.
Here.
Mike Johns. Here. Scott Fry.
Here.
Troy Patton is absent. We have a quorum.
Okay. We do have a couple of changes to this evening's agenda. I just found out that under old business, the first two items, which is Resolution 22-119 and the accompanying ordinance 22-42, both dealing with the annexing of certain real estate into the city of Westfield, will be pushed back until our next meeting. There's an issue there with the new redistricting, so the ordinances have to be tweaked a little bit. So we look forward to seeing those two items at our next meeting. In addition to that, under the miscellaneous business, we were going to try to do a Q3 budget review this evening, which we try to do within 45 days of the end of the quarter. We pushed that back. We were a little delayed in that with the budget process that's occurred, and the administration asked we have a little bit more time, so we'll be handling that at the next meeting, and we expect that we'll have a good discussion at that point in time. The clerk's department has gone ahead and sent the third quarter appropriation notice and color-coded it to all counselors today. So we've got a chance to review that over the next couple of weeks prior to our next meeting. Those are the changes to this evening's agenda. In addition to that, first item is the approval of the minutes from our October 24th meeting. Counselors, are there any additions or deletions to those minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second. Motion made by Scott Willis, seconded by Joe Edwards to approve the minutes from the October 24th meeting. Marla, would you call the roll, please?
Yes.
Cindy Spiljarek.
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Joe Edwards.
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
Our next item is the approval of the claims docket for November 14th, 2022. Counselors, do you have any questions regarding the claims docket? Hearing none, I do have some questions. I've gone through the docket. I've tried to compare it with the appropriation report from October. I would like to, I'd like to ask the council to hold off on paying the Taft invoices, which just came in. They total $171,000. These are invoices for the last 6 months that we just received, and I'd like to have an opportunity to review, and I think the council would too, those invoices prior to paying those. The rest of the claims docket looked good to me. Questions, comments?
And as always, if you guys want to meet like we did with Councilman Patton and Gilbert and Willis last time, be happy to go through that too.
Okay, I think we probably would do that. So then if, I guess I will make a motion then to approve the claims docket for November 14th, with the exception of the 2 line items for the Taft invoices. Do I have a second?
Second.
Marla made a motion, seconded by Joe Edwards. Would you call the roll, please?
Cindy Spilgerik,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Joe Edwards.
Yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Moving then, obviously, our old business items had been moved to our next meeting, so we're going right on to our new business area. First item under new business is ordinance 22-51, City of Westfield, in authorizing the vacation of public alleyway. This has a council introduction this evening, a public hearing on November 28th, and would be up for adoption and consideration on the 28th. I think Jonathan Nail, from our Public Works Director, is going to provide us with the details.
Yeah, for the record, John Nail, Director of Public Works, City of Westfield. Before you tonight is an introduction to a vacation of public alleyway. The public alleyway in question is part of the Union Square development. There's 2 old platted alleys in that block between Mill Street, Union Street, Jersey Street, and State Road 32. In order for Old Town to make sure that their secondary plat is cleaned up and all title work is complete, we need to go through this vacation of alleyway officially to vacate that alley, and then they are the owners of the parcels on either side of those alleys, so it would revert back to Old Town. The alleyways have no value from a transportation perspective for us, and so I would certainly ask that you consider this vacation and approve it. We'll have the public hearing at the next council meeting, at which time you guys can vote on the approval of this vacation.
Thank you, John. Any questions, councilors?
John, there is the old city well is near one of these things that we're gonna vacate. Is that used for anything now?
Not to my knowledge.
You know where it is? It's just southwest of the drugstore there.
Okay.
But it's, it was used for years and years and never did malfunction as far as I know, but
Yeah, I'm sure it shows up in topographic survey, documentation, and so forth, but yeah, I'm not aware of any use at this time.
I have one follow-up question. So Old Town will be assuming a vacated alley, is that correct, or?
Yeah, so typically the vacated alleyway or right-of-way is split in half and goes back to the adjacent property owners. Since they own both sides of all the vacated alley, they'd pick up both halves.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, councilors? Okay, hearing none, thank you, Jonathan. We look forward to hearing that in a couple weeks from now. Our next item then is ordinance 22-52, Traditions at Grand Park. This item has a council introduction this evening, and then we'll go for an APC hearing on December 5th. Probably at some point an APC workshop, and will be up for consideration at that point in time. As I understand this ordinance deals with the adding of basically 2.3 acres to the Wheeler Landing PUD, and Caleb Ernest from Community Development is going to share specifics.
Thank you, President. Members of the council, for the record, Caleb Ernest with the Community Development Department. As President Johns mentioned, this is amendment to the Wheeler Landing PUD, adding 2.34 acres to Area 3 of the PUD. Additionally, the proposed amendment includes amending the PUD to modify the number of units on the property as well as masonry material requirements. The property is located generally at the southwest corner of 186th Street and Kinsey. The representative of Leo Brown Development, the applicant, is here tonight and plans on making a presentation. They are available for questions, as am I if you have any for staff. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time. Bill Morton, Leo Brown Group, 802 East 86th Street, Indianapolis, Indiana. Happy to outline, just from a high level, the project. I know there's several steps that will occur following this introductory meeting, but wanted to give you a little background on our firm and the overall project. I think I've spoken to a handful of you all, really introducing this project as we were in the site selection phase. So obviously, the site has been selected, and we're kind of going through the process. So thanks again for your time. Our company, founded in 2006, we're a real estate developers and operators based here in Indianapolis. We've got 23 projects we've developed and still operate throughout the Midwest, mainly in the Big Ten states, so Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and a couple in Pennsylvania. Just a couple things to overview. As you can see, we're on 2 parcels for the proposed project. The red outline on the northern portion of the, thank you, is that's the 2.5 acre parcel that would be, it's proposed to be added to the PUD. And as you can see on our project here, we've got really a senior campus that encompasses independent living, assisted living, in memory care units. And in addition to that, we also have the single-story independent living cottages. The entire project would be on 1 tax parcel. Every unit would be age-restricted and would be for rent. There'd be various healthcare services, including food and beverage, various levels of care, which the residents would be assessed upon their admission. And the product is slightly different than some other nearby facilities. I'm very familiar with the Wellbrook facility down the street that's licensed as skilled nursing. And it does have a small memory care component to it, but primarily it's skilled nursing that will not be offered at this facility. And we're also aware of the other, the senior apartments recently approved. Again, slightly different. The senior apartments would not offer food, beverage, and healthcare, which would be offered at this facility. So slightly different. We've analyzed the market pretty thoroughly over the past few years. There is a need in our eyes, and we've hired a third-party market study group that confirms that we see a need. So thanks again for your time. Happy to answer any questions you might have, and look forward to working with you through the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Councilors?
Where is this at in relation to the airstrip?
So we'll be, yeah, thank you. Yep, so the airstrip would be right there, yeah.
Yeah, I just, there was a development on the south end of the airstrip and overwhelming feedback from the community about not putting something near this airstrip because it was like imminent disaster. And people came in and said, landing on a postage stamp and all these things. And so I guess, my questions would not be about the project, but would be about
the airstrip, like what's different? It doesn't back up to it, but certainly part of it does at the northern end of the airstrip. Is that correct or not?
A little bit, yes. And to address this, we have scheduled a neighborhood meeting. It'll be 2 weeks from tomorrow at the Wyndham Hotel, just a couple blocks down. And we will notify and invite everyone within the required area. So something to definitely address at that time for sure. And we're aware of that development. I think when we spoke, we've done our best to design around it. Those are single-story structures, and we would obviously design to the required setbacks and that type of thing.
Well, part of the problem is not the structures, it's the ponds and what populates the ponds, which are birds, big birds.
Understood, yeah. And there are ways, studies can be conducted to have certain species of plants that will deter those type of animals. And as you can see, we've done our best to have the stormwater retention on the opposite side of the site, so opposite of the landing strip.
The geese are pretty hard to deter, believe me.
I understand.
I do have a few questions, if I could ask. On the concept plan, it shows two-story. I think it says licensed wing. I should put my glasses on. It's not matching up with anything that I'm seeing in the actual concept plan. And then you do have the three-story more in the center, it looks like, of the project, correct?
That's right, yes.
And how many square feet is that three-story?
It's to be determined, approximately 150,000 square feet. So we're still in a schematic design phase, about 150,000 square feet.
Okay, and you're showing that you want an increase in the total number of units that's allowed in the Wheeler PUD?
No, I did understand when that was read, I believe that's a mistake. We'll be under the allocated units in the
Okay.
PUD.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I would just kind of echo a couple of the comments made by my fellow councilors here. We did have a huge issue with the last development that was proposed for the west side of this site, on the other west side of the airport there. And so I would just caution you that as you move through the process, to be aware of that. And hopefully you'll be able to find some solutions. The last petitioner was not. So be aware, please.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on then. Our next item for consideration this evening is ordinance 22-53, the 2023 salary ordinance for non-elected city employees. Has a council introduction this evening, is up for adoption consideration on the 28th. Jeremy Lawler, our Chief of Staff, is going to explain a little bit about this ordinance.
Thank you, Counselor. You did a really nice job opening up. This is the annual salary ordinance that is considered, that is largely adjusted to accommodate the cost of living adjustments that were approved a couple weeks ago now. We also utilize this time to amend into the ordinance certain new job titles that have been evaluated and graded, given a grade classification for a salary range over the last year by our consultant. The two that come to mind, and I think they are the only two. One is in the fire department. It's the emergency response social worker. And then the other is in the police department, which is the new major position. With that, I will open to any questions, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks to take it for consideration.
Thank you, Jeremy. Councilor, questions? Jeremy, since no one else has any questions, I would like to I guess, get a better understanding. Maybe you and I can meet over the next couple of weeks. It says in the ordinance here that the attachment A, the salary grades and ranges are aligned with the Archer compensation study. But I know that they weren't put together by the Archer people. And I was just like to meet with you and figure out how they have been modified over the years, and to make sure that they are still relevant and to our city.
Yeah, at the advice of Archer, which is our consultant from a few years ago, every employee in every position filled out a survey per the job descriptions. Then Archer evaluated the job descriptions, interviewed many of the employees, took data from mostly the Midwest, but other like communities in the nation, and provided a salary range for each position based on the educational requirements, the technical requirements, experience, and things. Since that time, any new job, like the two that I described, goes back to Archer for classification or grading, and then the only modifications have been associated with cost of living, unless Archer has reviewed something and modified their recommendation.
Okay, yeah, and I mean, to be clear, I have no questions regarding salaries of any individual in the city. I think those are set in stone. We did that in the budget process. So that's not a concern of mine at all. It's more specifically, how is the study still relevant? Are the ranges still appropriate for where they should be? Have they been increased too much in some areas? Our employees, I'd like to have a better understanding how employees are transitioning through those ranges over a period of time. We've had the study in place now, I think, for 4 years.
Seems
So we
right.
should be able to kind of get a better feel for that. So if we can just kind of visit on that a little bit this week, and then at our next meeting, we can kind of address a few of those concerns.
Happy to meet.
That'd be great. Thank you. Our next item for new business this evening is ordinance 22-54, the 2023 elected officials salary ordinance. Again, this item is up for a council introduction this evening and adoption consideration on the 28th. Marla Ehler, I know the clerk's office put this ordinance together. Could you explain to us a little bit about what it deals with?
So my understanding is that the elected officials' salaries really won't be changing. So it's the clerk treasurer's job to draft the salary ordinance for elected officials, and you have really no changes in it. Other than the adjustment for, I think it was offered whether or not you wanted, to give elected officials a 4% cost of living adjustment. That's up to you to decide, but I think it's been calculated without it, if I understood Cindy correctly this morning.
Well, as I understand, the ordinance has a 4% increase in it, or is that?
Oh, okay. I did not know that she'd done that. I
That's what
apologize.
I'm looking at. So-
Okay.
So that would be up for consideration. That would be for the elected officials in the city. Any comments? Councilors? Hearing none, we'll take that under consideration, and that will be up for review at our next meeting. Next item this evening is Resolution 22-122. This resolution deals with and touches base with the previous two ordinances. This resolution deals with future budgets and salary ordinances introduced and adopted concurrently. This is up for a council introduction this evening and adoption consideration this evening. I'm going to provide you, I think, with a little background on this resolution. This is something that I had spoken to the administration about, the clerk's office about. What happened this year was that The non-elected salary ordinances are supposed to be submitted to the SBOA on November, by no later than November 1st. And we missed that deadline this year. And obviously there was confusion on everybody's parts. I'm not singling, it was nobody's responsibility totally for why that got missed, but it did get missed. It seems to me that we should do what most cities in Hamilton County do, and that's to tie the two ordinances, the salary ordinance for the non-elected officials and the elected officials, to the budget, so that when we do and pass the budget, we approve that in October. Concurrently, we also approve these two ordinances. That will prevent us in the future from missing any deadlines, from having to call up the SBOA and ask them for forgiveness, and for being punctual and timely in our processes and procedures. So, councilors, questions?
Mr. Johns, this is partly on me, if I just may. You know, I think this happened last year too, for the same reason, that the budget process kind of went into the very last stage, and then the administration and I were waiting for the budget process to end to be able to prepare the ordinance and adjust everything. So I think you're right. Everything should be, obviously we want to follow what we need to follow, and make sure that everything's done. But I do want to point out that, you know, it's difficult to do it while we're waiting for the budget process to unwind and get to the last second, like we did this year and last year with a couple of different work sessions and everything else. I don't know, it's up to you if it's feasible to do it concurrently. You know, the mayor under that statute, under Section B, can present the ordinance on his own, and it's up to the council to cut it. The mayor hasn't done that, I mean, probably for good reason, because he wants to make this an approach that goes in unison. But I'll take some of the blame of that, because I too was waiting along the way, and it probably is a good idea to kind of revisit this. I just want to bring that to your attention.
Right, and again, I'm not pointing fingers at
No,
anybody
I
for being
understand.
late or tardy, but I just think if we kind of we resolve and to try to marry the two items together, and even if the budget gets done on October 24th, we should be able to approve this at the same meeting, or have a draft done, or do something so that we can get it approved and meet the.
Yeah, no, I think in theory that's a great idea. Just when for the staff especially, and Jeremy can speak to it, if there are adjustments that need to be made after that approval, I think that's where the difficulty is in some of the capacity. And for me, I'm kind of waiting for that. I'm not saying it's somebody's fault again. I'm just saying that there is probably a better way to do it. Maybe stagger it. I would just suggest maybe staggering it a little bit to have the budget approved at one meeting, and this has to be presented at the next meeting. Maybe something like that.
So I think that would work fine, as long as we just have to do the budget earlier in October to make sure it's
I think
done
that's
by the
right.
middle of October.
I think that's right.
Yeah, I agree. But my point though would be to, you know, the clerk's office now is on the standard agendas, when they do the yearly agenda, they're specifying what items occur at what council meetings. So we know that the quarterly financial reports are specific to certain meetings. We know that what meeting we elect our officials at, what meeting other boards have to be filled at. So we should probably get this into the clerk's agenda, so that when she publishes the agenda, we go through our pre-council meeting, it's there for us.
Sure.
I'm just trying to not.
And I appreciate that. And I think, to Manny's point, well, I guess two things. Number one, we had intended on the budget being approved a couple weeks earlier, but we missed a September meeting. But also what we'll do, in reference to Manny's point, the mayor has the ability to set the salaries for all the staff. So what we'll do is we'll bring forward the salary ordinance based on our proposed adjustments. And I guess if you decide to lessen that increase next year, then you'll have to vote for that at that approval time. So you'll vote contingent upon all these changes. We'll have to change them afterward, but we can still get it to the SBOA on time. Is that fair for everyone?
Sounds like a plan.
All right.
Absolutely. Hearing that, then do I have a motion on this resolution?
I move to approve this motion.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion has been made to approve Resolution 22-122, and by Scott Fry, seconded by Joe Edwards. Marla, would you call the roll, please?
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Cindy Spillierick,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Our next item on tonight's agenda is ordinance 22-55, authorizing the clerk treasurer to make funds transfers. This ordinance is a council introduction this evening, up for adoption consideration on November 28th. Marla, can you address this? You're prepared to address this one?
So my understanding, this is somewhat of a standard ordinance that's done every year in an effort to make sure that none of the funds are in the negative toward the end of the year. So we have a lot of work to do to meet that deadline, but that's what you're authorizing, is for us to make sure that we don't have to call for a bunch of additional appropriations, but we can make funds transfers out of the departments in order to cover any budget lines in the appropriations that are over budget.
Correct, okay. So the standard yearly ordinance that's done every year.
That's my understanding.
Okay. Any questions, counselors? Hearing none, do I have, well, I guess we'll just move forward. That'll be on the agenda for the 28th for approval. Our next item this evening, ordinance 22-56, appropriating RDC funds for legal services. Again, this item has a council introduction this evening, public hearing on the November 28th, and up for adoption consideration on November 28th. And Jeremy Lawler, Chief of Staff, provide us with the background.
Yeah, sure. Thank you again. So we've talked many, many times throughout the last, I don't know, few months about the RDC, or Redevelopment Commission, taking responsibility for the legal fees that they generate. This appropriation ordinance, essentially you all are approving an appropriation of RDC funds for payment of legal bills. What it will do, it's in the amount of $400,000. It'll allow us to transfer from the general fund, so move those dollars to the RDC. So the RDC will then reimburse the general fund for any spend up to this point, and then the $400,000 should be more than enough to cover any of their legal bills for the remainder of the year. So it'll effectively move legal fees that the RDC is responsible for to the Redevelopment Commission to pay for.
So essentially, they will reimburse general for what they've paid in behalf of the RDC, is what you're saying.
Correct, and we have invoices that have not been processed yet that will get processed by the RDC after this is approved, and then any additional costs between now and December 31st that are generated by the RDC will be able to be paid by the RDC because of this appropriation.
Questions, Council? Comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll wait and address that ordinance in 2 weeks from now. Next ordinance, 22-57, additional appropriation for State Road 32, streetscape design services. This item has a council introduction this evening, public hearing on the 28th, and Jeremy, can you provide detail on this one?
Certainly. So, as we've talked also many times throughout the past, I don't know, 9 or 10 months, the council and the administration's desire to invest into the State Road 32 project with aesthetic improvements for the downtown through the 32 corridor. We've held various public input sessions and are pretty far down the road in design. I'm proposing a $375,000 additional appropriation of general fund dollars to 101-013-349, which is the Public Works Services line, to cover the cost of the design services. So beyond the schematic selection process that we did previously that you all allocated dollars for, this is the design, development, and actual construction documentation and bid documents associated with that so that we can get it ready to go for bid with the 32 project for construction.
This is for streetlights and other stuff.
It's all the things that we've been meeting about in that street committee. Yes, this is anything outside of what is required for transportation reasons. So it is landscaping, pavers, lighting, decorative pedestrian lighting, decorative crosswalks. It's really an aesthetic project.
Is this just for design, isn't it? This is not, we're talking about millions for the.
That's correct. This is specifically for the engineering and design of the project and bid document preparation.
Is that going to put you in a difficult position for any other contracts if you're taking it out of the professional services? Is that what you said for that line?
What we would be doing is additionally appropriating dollars.
Okay, so you
into-
just want to put it in there, okay.
Yeah, there's general fund dollars coming in to fund the design, $375,000, up to $375,000. I don't know that it'll get quite that high, but wanted to make sure that we covered it because it's not in the '23 budget either.
Would it make more sense to take it out of infrastructure improvement, or does that not matter?
Infrastructure improvements really for construction things, like physical construction of stuff, or at least that's the way it's allocated in the existing budget. This is a professional service, so that's why I was proposing to put it in the professional services line.
Okay.
And I will point out in section 1, there's a typo that it says $350,000 in the words, but $375,000 in the parentheses, and we'll get that amended.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'll take care of that.
Yeah, we'll get that fixed up before the next meeting.
No other comments? Thank you, Jeremy. Next item, ordinance 22-58, establishing procedures to record appointments to the boards and commissions. This item has a council introduction this evening and will be up for adoption consideration on the 28th. And this is an ordinance that the clerk's treasurer's department has been working on. And I think Marla Ayler's been working on this, so can you provide us with background?
Sure. So it is the clerk treasurer's responsibility to typically keep the record of appointments to boards and commissions. However, Mr. Zager did that for many, many years. And when he departed, maybe assumptions were made, maybe they weren't. It wasn't really staff's responsibility to do it. We are simply recognizing that. However, as a private citizen, before working for the clerk treasurer's office, I had contacted Mr. Zager and have what I know to be his last known list of term expiration dates. We have spoken with him recently. He thought he could try and send something over, but basically this is an effort on our part to get all the dates to jive again. And when I say that, for instance, with the Planning Commission, when that was first established, the Indiana Code wants you to stagger it so that your entire commission doesn't terminate at one time, so that it would leave some incumbency on there to help guide any new appointments. So this is kind of an effort to correct that and make sure that going forward, whomever is elected mayor and whoever their appointments are going to be, that needs to be fixed so that we know Planning Commission is a 4-year term, but we don't want them to all expire in the same year. So we're making an effort to fix that. I have received some record from the planning department, their best remembrance of who needs to be replaced when. There are some appointments that appear that you guys have never been offered to make as a council. Some of the terms of the appointed persons might have expired a couple years ago. So I'm just trying to fix all of that and think that this ordinance perhaps will do that for you. If you have any questions, I can try and answer them for you.
I would just share with everybody that I've been obviously talking to the clerk's office, and I had encouraged them to do something like this, to take control and organize things. I know when this council first took office 3 years ago, one of the first things we had to do was council appointments to various commissions and boards on our first night. And nobody could tell us what we needed to do, what boards needed to be filled, what positions do we have, as a council, have among all the various boards. And Councilor Zager was able to give us a list of some of those appointments, but it wasn't a total list. And really, when you looked across there and you started asking some of the different commissions and boards, nobody really knew what had happened over the years. And so really, I think it would be, again, going back to trying to put together functionality, tucking and tying policies and procedures. This is something that we really need to do as a council, so that when the next council comes in, if there's a new mayor, the next mayor comes in who doesn't understand or know anything with respect to who's on the boards and commissions, that we all are on the same page. We know these are the appointments, these are how long they last. Those that are staggered, how long, who's in those positions, and when do those expire. So that's the purpose behind this ordinance, and I personally support it. I think it's something we should do. I know that one of the attorneys, the clerk's attorney, had drafted this ordinance. Manny, I'd ask for you, if you would, to take a look at it and see, and make any additions, deletions, get together and make sure that it is the best that it can be. But I think that the need is out there, and we really need to address it, and we should do it now.
Sure, yeah, happy to. I think it's a laudable goal. There are some, in my brief review today when it was added, there are some effects that, based on the language chosen, probably weren't intended, based on the appointments being made by the council or by the mayor's office, and what the effects of those appointments are. And also, it doesn't count for appointments that carry over under statute. So yes, I'll have comments for Mr. Webster, and I'll share with everybody, obviously, as we hopefully move to clean this up and get it ready.
Appreciate that.
Sure.
From your opinion, we should be able to get this done within 2 weeks. Is that fair?
I think so.
As far as getting the ordinance written.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, getting the ordinance written is the easy part. It's getting together over the holiday, right? That might be difficult. So I don't know Mr. Webster's schedule, but we're happy. I'm happy. I'll be here. I'll happy to share what my thoughts are about this and what some of the fixes might be to try to address some of these issues.
Because we just saw it.
Right, I
What
just
was,
saw it this
what was the
afternoon.
discussion at the pre-council?
Well, Mr. Webster has actually been on vacation, so he shared it with me. I think we linked it, after we knew we had it together on Friday. Apologies, he's unable to be here tonight because he arrived home from vacation, rather ill, but it was our intention to have him here tonight. Regardless, we do know, I'm trying to put together a really comprehensive spreadsheet of all the boards and commissions, who all's on them, generally when they were appointed to it, along with each board and commission has its own special Indiana code then that corresponds with it as to length of term. What happens if you don't agree to a nomination? Like one of the interesting conundrums is the Economic Development Commission typically would have a county council appointment, and that county council nomination, and that nomination, I believe, although I can't find it in minutes, maybe it's been rejected is the best way to say. So Mayor Cook was able to fill that space. Now, where it gets tough for me, not being an attorney, and Mr. Webster was going to help and reach out to Mr. Hersig also to say, are these appointments then in perpetuity, or do they have an expiration date also, so that someone at some point could perhaps come in and fill that spot, rather than just, and it has to do with there's a statute that says something about if the appointment isn't made within 60 days, then it can be filled. And those are the kind of things that the goal, excuse me, the goal of this ordinance is to correct all of that. Now, how that happens, I think we'll have to work together to figure it out, but that is my goal.
Yeah, and part of the issue that the statutes also say, until reappointed, right? So some of the consideration that I want to try to avoid, that I have concern with is that we don't want an ordinance that infringes on what the statutes already say and confuses the issue even further. So that's going to be a part of what I do, and for better or worse, I have to sign off on this, because it's going to, ultimately, if there's a challenge or an issue, it's going to come back to me, and why did you recommend it, or why didn't you say anything? So, but I'm happy to work with Mr. Webster on that.
Perfect, thank you.
So if I can ask a question here, just for clarity. Again, I understand the concept of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish, supported 100%. If I'm hearing the conversation correctly, the further discussion correctly, it sounds as if it's going to potentially require some of the appointments, because it sounds like we're not 100% sure maybe when some of these appointments were made and that type of thing. So we would have to have a follow-up that would indicate, okay, we're going to set this date as, for lack of better terminology on my part, the expiration of this appointment. Is that a fair statement?
Not the sentiment is right, but you're not going to be able to, depends on the appointment. In some of the appointments statutorily, they carry over for the same term, right? So if it was an appointment for a year and there was no subsequent roll-off and reappointment, or somebody who was appointed in that person's stead, that would carry forward for a year, or until the council, in some instances, the council or the mayor says, thanks for your service, we're replacing you. So if and when those questions arise, I can certainly help address, what you can do and what you can't do statutorily.
Okay.
And it's going to apply both for the mayor and the council.
Sure.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Good question.
Can I add something? This has a secondary benefit. One of the questions I get all the time is, what kind of opportunities are there for me to serve in city government? Where can I be of value, and where can I hit up an open spot? So I think that'd be really handy for the community to see as well.
Right, and what I noticed in putting all this information together is many cities have a portal where they can contact the city and say, hey, I have an interest in maybe this board or commission. If a spot ever becomes open, would you contact me? And frankly, we don't have that right now, but it could be as simple as just saying, we're gonna, reach out to the clerk treasurer's office if you have interest in being appointed by the mayor for such and such a role, or reach out to the mayor, but we'd be happy to keep a file if that's something that makes everybody happy.
Sure.
That's great.
Thank you.
Okay. Hearing no other comments, that concludes our new business for this evening. We'll move on to the next item. Are there any residents or guests who would like to speak to the council this evening?
I have one card at the moment. Christopher Larson.
Good evening, Council. Christopher Larson, 1275 Reichart Drive in Westfield, Indiana. I just wanted to come to you, talk about our favorite topic, the budget. And I just have a little comment or recommendation, if you will, or request. During over this process, there were 4 budget meetings, and they're all public, so the public can access them and listen to them, but there's only one opportunity for public input in a forum like this. And that was when it was introduced. And then there were many adjustments that were made, and not really an opportunity, I felt, for citizens to comment on those. And so I would just ask that you're meeting all the requirements, right, having that public. So maybe at the if there are going to be a lot of adjustments or things like that, that we have the public have another opportunity with the public hearing before the vote, just to get further input, because I'm not sure if it's clear that they can email you and let them know, or things like that. So a lot of people think that this is the only forum, which is why I came before you to do it this way. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Clerk treasurer comments this evening.
We have none.
City council comments, we'll start with Cindy Spiljerik, a report from the APC.
The APC did meet November 9th. On the consent agenda, we had the detailed development plan for the sewage treatment plant expansion and a commercial inline tenant building in Harmony. Westfield Yard PUD did receive a 5-4 recommendation, positive recommendation out of Plan Commission. That night, they are not here tonight and will likely be here at our next meeting, don't know for sure. There was extensive discussion at the end of the meeting that was not on the agenda on a kind of a wide variety of just generalized topics regarding the process of, with a PUD moving from council through APC and APC's role, and a lot of different questions about the comprehensive plan and development patterns and trends, our agendas and why they seem light, a lot of different things like that. So if you want to delve into that, I do encourage you to see about the last 45 minutes of that meeting, I believe. That's it.
Thank you, Cindy. Any other councilor comments?
I got one real quickly. Just a reminder that Wednesday at 1600, 4 o'clock Eastern Time, the Westfield Washington Public Library, we're doing a ribbon cutting on our new space. So it'd be good to see everybody there.
Good deal.
One more thing, they're collecting hats and mittens at that time too for the groundbreaking, so. They're collecting hats, the township is, hats and mittens, if people would like to donate.
Yeah, that is correct. That is correct.
Any other comments? I've got just a couple then. First of all, I've got an update on ordinance 22-48, which was approved with changes on October 24th. Because some of you have asked me questions about that. Obviously, this is an ordinance that appropriated funds for the design of the new police department and the new fire station. I think we discussed earlier this week that the ordinance had been recorded, but it had been recorded without the changes that had been made here at the council. Consequently, the appropriated funds, as at this point, could also be used for administrative salaries, benefits, and legal fees, which was not the intent of the council. So basically, I just want to let everyone know that the administration is making the changes to the ordinance as to reflect what happened at the council, and the clerk's office will then re-record the new revised ordinance. The SBOA has been notified. The error is being corrected, and it's not necessary for this council to consider an additional action on the ordinance or to revote. It's just we're making the corrections, and we're good to go. So, just to alleviate any concerns there. Secondly, I just want to let everyone know that at our November 28th meeting, we're going to receive an update from Kristen Berkman and the Streetscape Committee as to where we stand with that project right now. They made some really great progress on that project. The time frame has been it's been like a pendulum, whipsawing back and forth. I mean, initially we were going to try to have that streetscape project done this fall, then it got moved back to next fall, and now it's been moved forward again to the middle of February. So as the committee understands it right now, the goal will be to have the design work done for approval by this committee, certainly by the middle of February. So I expect that when Kristen comes next week, we may not still have a dollar amount for the streetscape, but we'll have a much clearer idea of what it'll be, and that the goal now will be to have that ready to go back to NDOT with fully developed plans by the middle of February. So just a quick update. There's some good progress being made there and some exciting stuff to share with you at our next meeting. So my comments. Mayor Cook?
Yeah, a couple, please. First of all, Coach Gilbert, congratulations on a season that I think you may not admit exceeded your expectations, but arguably one of your greatest coaching jobs with what you had to work with coming off of last year and all. So congratulations. That was a lot of fun. And you said it's going to get better.
The youngest team I've ever been a part of
Is that right?
in 25 years of coaching are 40 years of playing. A pretty young team, so we better be better.
So we expect big things next year.
Fair enough.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. And secondly, our communications director, Chris Prophet, took his first vacation a week ago to Mexico and came back with something he didn't want to bring back. And he is in ICU at Riverview. And I visited with him, I've spoken with him. He was expecting to get out of that today, but he's had one heck of a rough week. So our prayers are with Chris and his wife and daughter, but I think he's going to be okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Cook. Well, then, at that point, then, I think we'll bring the meeting to a close at just before 7:56 tonight. Thank you all.
There you go. You wake up in the morning.
I don't know that that's what it is, but that's